Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I am very excited about having you here and about the hour in front of us, which I believe is going to be absolutely stupendous. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. My co-host today is Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. How are you, Rabbi?
I'm very well. Thank you, Avrum. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really doing well. Thank you so much. And a little while back, the rabbi said to me, he said, Avrum, I like when you call me Avrum. He said, I have this idea, and the idea is to present the Parsha HaShavua, the portion of the week, the Torah portion of the week, and to explain it through classic literature. And I said, wow, that sounds like a terrific idea. I love that. So last week, we launched this series. We're going to try it out, see how it goes. The series is called Classic Tales, Biblical Truths, Weekly Torah Insights Through Literature. Last week, we talked about Parshat Ba'alotcha, and we gave it a context. We explained it. We juxtaposed it with Shai Agnon's story, A Simple Story. And the response was excellent. I heard great things about it. Rabbi, you heard good stuff?
I heard, and the most touching one was people who told me that they heard it on Friday and they shared it around their Shabbos table, although usually they don't do it. And this is exactly the effect I wanted, because I think that people around the Shabbat table should speak about the Parsha, but many people find it very difficult just to take a Ramban here and Rashi here and to put them together. It's very artificial. It doesn't come from their heart and mind. And what we try to do together, Avrum, is to take life and to make life themselves the commentary to the Torah. Now, when I talk about life, it's not just a simple story of what happened, is like insight into it. What are the motives behind it? What the people thought when they did something? What was the source of a mistake or success? And great literature is doing exactly that.
I think too, and my experience is such, that somewhere along the road, Torah, it developed a bad reputation, or perhaps the teachers. So I will sit at a Shabbat table, Rabbi, and I'll say, I'd like to give a Devar Torah, and here's what happens. Eyes roll. Eyes roll. And I think the reason for that, and tell me if you agree, is that very often people who are expressing Torah do so in a very antiquated way, in a very strict way, not in a colorful, creative way. But I think what we're offering here is something that people can take with them and say, this is fascinating. This is wonderful. To be able to compare or to show what a Torah portion is talking about through some great literature, that is colorful. That is exciting. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with you, and I want to tell you a story unrelated, and then I will relate it to what we discuss now.
Okay.
You know my love to Italy, and I visited Italy a few times. And last time we went to Florence. This was not the first time, but this time I saw that there is a museum for sciences named after Galileo Galilei. And because I like math and I like sciences, I decided to go. It will be like a nice hour and a half or 2 hours. And Avrum, once I just stepped into the museum, we stayed there for 6 hours.
Yeah.
It was amazing. The first time that, I used to be a math teacher for a while, and you talk about sinus and cosinus and tangents. And here you see how everything comes into life, how people on a dark night, sailors could find their ways and to sail safely to a certain place. All the sciences and the formulas and the drawing on the whiteboard became alive. You saw that it works. And now I will relate it to what we do. The Torah is Torat Chaim. It's a Torah of life. It gives us direction, sometimes in good times, sometimes in bad times. And I find that good literature, indeed brings the principle of the Torah to life, or sometimes you can compare one situation in a certain book that we are going to do today, for example, to how the Torah look at it. And sometimes to see that the Torah indeed talks about eternity, about life from the thousands of years ago, and you can be sure that it's going to be thousands of years ahead of us, because the human being is the human being.
And we don't change all that dramatically over the generations, do we?
We don't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes we don't even learn from lessons that we could learn from. And you know what? In a certain way, think about it, jealousy and love and all our emotions. Do you think that there is a difference between two people that talk together now and our great grandparents or their great grandparents? They dealt with the same issues, with the same disappointment, with the same excitement, and our grandchildren will do exactly the same.
Yes, agreed. Rabbi Gemara, let's launch into this experiment that we're part of. Firstly, let's, if you don't mind, make a tefillah, a prayer for the hostages. May the one who bless our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their family swiftly and soon. And let us say amen. I would like to dedicate this shir, this class, this podcast to the Jewish workers at Canada Post. And I say this because I saw a post on Facebook this week about how difficult it has become for many Jewish employees of Canada Post to work within that environment, which has become highly toxic and anti-Semitic in many ways. I'm not suggesting that every Canada Post worker is anti-Semitic, God forbid. But this person was writing, who does work at Canada Post, that they're having a very, very tough time. So let's group around them. Let's give them our strength. Let's give them the merit of our shir here, of our learning Torah, and once again to strengthen the Jewish people and turn the minds of individuals who have taken on very negative views of the Jewish people. We are a Jewish people. We are a beautiful people, and there's much to be proud of. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the shir this week is all about Parshat Shelach, and it is being compared or juxtaposed to a classic book that we all read when we were in high school called The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I'm going to give a little bit of a preface, and then I am going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague. The portion of the Torah known as Shelach, found in the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar, spans chapter 13 and 14. It tells the story of the Israelites' journey towards the promised land and their pivotal moment of sending spies into Canaan to assess the land's inhabitants and resources. Here's a little bit of a synopsis. The portion begins with Moses sending 12 spies, one from each tribe of Israel. These were very auspicious people, by the way, into the land of Canaan to gather information about its inhabitants, its cities, and its agricultural potential. After 40 days, the spies returned with a mixed report. While they confirmed the land's fertility and abundance, they also expressed fear and doubt due to the strength and the size of the Canaanite inhabitants. Okay, we'll talk more about that as we go. Lord of the Flies by William Golding is a classic novel published in 1954. It tells a story of a group of British boys stranded on a deserted island due to a plane crash during a wartime evacuation. Initially, the boys attempted to establish order and maintain a signal fire to attract rescuers. They elected a leader, Ralph, who represents civilization and rationality. However, conflict arises, particularly with Jack, who leads a faction of hunters and symbolizes savagery and primal instincts. We'll leave it at that. I have to tell you, Rabbi, launching into this discussion today, as I learned the Parsha and as I read the book or a synopsis of it, I really began to understand exactly what we're trying to do here. So tell us about the Parsha and the underlying message of it, which we want to share with others.
Okay, so first of all, like the story of the Meraglim is quite amazing. People are about to enter the land of Israel, and normally they want to know what they are going to see there. And they approach the leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, who, as we know from another Chumash, the Chumash of the Varim, they came to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Hashem himself allowed him to send the Meraglim, although he promised them that they will be able to enter the land. They going into the land, and exactly as you described, they found an amazing land, fruits, unusual fruits, big and apparently tasty. And exactly as God promised them, a land flowing with milk and honey. However, and this is a very important word, however, they assess the situation and they don't believe that they are able to conquer the land. Now, why immediately the image of Lord of the Flies come? Because the story is about a group find themselves in a new place with a huge uncertainty about their future. And as a human group, they need leadership. And the story of Lord of the Flies is a lot about quality of leadership and what happened to a group of people that are formed in an unexpected way and have to be led by leaders. And usually leaders are strong people, and sometimes different people believe that they're supposed to be the leaders. And that's the story of the Lord of the Flies. Now, amazingly enough, as I said, the set of the story is very much like what happened in Bamidbar. Okay, it's not an island, but it's a remote place, uncertainty. They don't know. They just walk. When the cloud is moving, they move with the cloud. When it parks, they they camp in a certain place. They have no idea what will happen tomorrow. They have a leader that took them out of Mitzrayim, promised them that they will arrive to the land of Israel, but it's not happening. So the dynamics of Lord of the Flies might be the dynamics that happened to the Jewish people in Bamidbar. Of course, you have here a divine leadership with Moshe Rabbeinu. There are many differences, but as a society, if you read Lord of the Flies, you will understand so much better what happened between Moshe and Aaron and the people of Israel, between Caleb and Yoshua, who opposed the majority and said, no, we do have to go to the land of Israel. We can do it. We can. And they risked their life, because if not the unexpected appearance of God, they would be stoned there. And everyone who read the Lord of the Flies know that actually the end is very, very similar. They would kill the leader. This was the plan, to kill the leader, but somehow, in a miracle, a naval officer came and put an end to the situation. And that's why, as I said, it's quite amazing. And I'm not sure that Golding did not write it with some ideas taken from the Sefer of Bamidbar. I would give him this credit.
I like the way you do that, by the way. And last week when we did Bahalotcha, you said you're pretty certain that when Agnon wrote a simple story, that he had Bahalotcha open next to him.
You are going to hear it next week and the week after, because
like
sometimes, again, the beauty of the Torah, she takes a situation, and if you learn it, not read it, learn it, you are going to find all the richness of human emotion in the story. And we are going to do it together today, because I have to tell you one thing that changed after rereading the story of the Meraglim and after reading Lord of the Flies. Avrum, let me ask you a question. What to you is the greatest miracle that happened to the Jewish people in the desert? If you had to rate them, what would you say?
Well, I would say the splitting of the sea was the greatest one.
Splitting the sea, no question. Maybe the manna.
Yes, manna
came every day. Maybe the water in the middle of the desert. There are many miracles. But, I want to quote Pascal, the famous French scientist. He was asked by Louis, I believe the 14th, I'm not sure. Tell me, can you prove me miracles? The king asks the scientist. The scientist, by the way, was also a religious person, Christian, very religious. And he said, the king, the Jews, the greatest miracle of all.
Yes.
Sometimes the greatest miracles are happening when you see society and you see certain things that does not fall into statistics, and the Jewish people are one of them. Like a small group of people that managed somehow to cross history where great empires failed and ceased to exist. This is a miracle. And after reading Lord of the Flies, what is the greatest miracle, in my opinion? The fact that a group of people went through the desert 40 years and did not collapse into themselves. Mm-hmm. Because a group with uncertainty, don't know what will happen tomorrow, when the leader promised them that maybe in few days they are going to be in the land and they don't see the end of it, did not kill each other. Because the laws of society dictate and will determine that in a situation like this, fights will erupt all over in the most violent way. Now, not that it didn't happen. You had the story with Korach. You have in our book, in our Chumash of Bamidbar, you have many little stories about problems, but you don't see the revolution that will kill maybe most of the people before they enter the land, while they don't know where they are going to.
Most of the people, that word most is significant because God did cull the group. In other words, there were people along the way who were very evil and wanted to rebel against Moshe Rabbeinu, and God would kill them.
And you know what? This also explains me why Hashem was so harsh about knocking down any attempt for rebellion.
Yes.
Because here is the point. Many people, when they read it, and I heard it once from one of my students, say, God seems to be so angry.
Yes.
He read the stories of Bamidbar, such as Zam, wrath. And you know what? It's a good question, because we always portray Hashem El Rachum, Bechanun, Erech Apayim, Rav Chesed. We read these psukim on Slichot and Yom Kippur, and the image in our imagination, the attributes of God are very, very different. And here, like, boom, boom, every time that someone did something wrong, Hashem killed them, send them a geifa, send something to diminish it on the spot. And that's the reason. When you are in a sensitive situation, like in the desert, in society, where you have to organize your own life, The moment you break the rule,
Yeah.
you are doomed. You are gone. So it's not the wrath of Hashem. It's a way of keeping a society, a very vulnerable society, intact. And sometimes maybe we'll talk about this book another time, about like a rebellion that took place on a ship or something like this. The rule is you shoot the person who tried to rebel against the ship sailor, the Kabarnit. Why? Because chaos will destroy everyone in a very short time. So this is again another insight that I learned from Lord of the Flies. You cannot keep chaos even for 1 second, because it will end up with everyone being dead.
And if people think that's strict, think about the environment that you work in. Think about that one toxic person that comes on board, and how next week, or maybe even the next day or two, all of a sudden somebody else starts espousing toxicity. What we do as employees is eventually we tell the person, hey, this isn't working. It's not this sort of environment. It's a kind, loving environment, and it's not working out for you. Rabbi, I want to give a bit of a context here as to what we're speaking of, so that those individuals who are not that learned in Torah, Jews, non-Jews, we welcome everybody, should understand. We are talking about Parashat Shelach. It's the portion in the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar, the desert, which discusses what the rabbi has referred to as the Meraglim. Meraglim is Hebrew, and it means spies. We'll be using both those terms, we'll juxtapositioning those terms throughout our discussion here today. It is the fourth book in the book of 5, and is fascinating. Overall, Shelach serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of doubt, fear, and a lack of faith in God's promises. It underscores the importance of trust, obedience, perseverance in fulfilling divine purposes, despite the challenges and uncertainties encountered along the way. So let's stay with the portion before we dive into Lord of the Flies. Rabbi, isn't it fascinating that you have these important figures, and the Torah says they're all very auspicious people, and they're called upon to go into Canaan, which would eventually be Israel. 12 of them, 10 of them come back with a very negative report, which really essentially was a report that undermined the boss. Who's the boss? God. How did that work?
So let me counter your question with my question, which
Very Jewish.
Again, because of our podcast, I had to rethink everything that I knew. And
Yes.
This was something wonderful that, thanks to you, I have to rethink things that, I always carried with me and always thought that I know. So here is my question. You presented the question in the following way. Here are the most fearing God Jews, most important people of the Jewish people, and they fail so miserably, not believing to God, to demoralize the spirit of the nation, and this was the greatest sin that we are going to see. How did that happen? Because you, in your question, assume because they were so important, then you expect them to stand to a very high standard. Now, let me ask you a question, because I'm sure you met and you interviewed many important people. Do you think that maybe being important is the source of the problem?
Can you expand on that? Expand on that.
Yeah, I will expand on it. My question is very, very simple. When I read the Parsha, and again, this year it was the first time that I asked this question, and you know what? I challenge you, go to all the Mefarshim, all the commentaries, all the rabbis who explain these stories, and there is one point that no one touched. Maybe in our program, it's going to be the first time.
Yes.
The Meraglim, the spies, came back with a very negative report. Now, what was the end game here? What did they think is going to happen when they are going to tell the people, we are unable to conquer the land of Israel? Did they have any motive here? They just came and threw a story. These are leaders, okay, smart people, for sure. Let's not ask ourselves like what happened to their relationship with God, their memories from the recent history of splitting of the sea, leaving Mitzrayim. They are leaders, and my question is very simple. Every leader, when he does something, he wants to achieve something. What did they try to achieve? What was the plan? Going back to Egypt, to stay in the desert? Okay, there is a problem. What is their solution to the problem? Did you ever think about it? I never thought about it.
I'm hearing you. And important people very often have an agenda of their own.
That's right. And here is my rereading of the Parsha. The Parsha starts in this like magnificent count. You know, these are their names for the tribe of Reuben, Shamua, the son of Zakur. For the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, the son of Hori. You have like, today we are at the time of graduation. So when you are called to the podium, everyone say your name and you feel so great about yourself and about your achievement. That's exactly the same. It's like the graduation. Here is Shaphat ben Hori. Here is. And you know what? When I reread it, I say to myself, these guys, they led their tribes. They were the most distinguished people of their tribes. They go now to the land of Israel, and something magnificent is going to happen there, or actually two things. Number one, in the desert, they were tribes. We have the perfect arrangement of the camp. Here is Yehuda. Here is Simeon. Here is in the middle the tribe of the Levites. And I do believe that every head of a tribe felt very important. The most important person for the group that he led.
Yes.
They are going to Israel. What is going to happen there? Most likely, they are going to have a monarch. They are going to have a king, which is a mitzvah in the Torah. They are not going to function maybe as tribes, but more like a nation. What will happen to them?
Yes, very good.
What will happen to them? And they were concerned about it. You can be a great person, but at the end of the day, you think about your status and your ego. And this is not only my idea. You will be surprised that although we don't find it in the regular commentaries, the Zohar, the Kabbalistic work of the Zohar, said that they understood that when they will come to the land of Israel, they will lose their status. Now, I spoke about the fact that from being like a leader, you are going to be one of 12 leaders, which is like going down. This is one issue, but there was another which to me is even more important. And I want to tell you what happened to the Ethiopian case that came to the land of Israel and maybe to the Yemenite rabbis in the 50s when they arrived to Eretz Israel. And actually, you can read it about many Mizrahi Jews and people who came from Romania. The dynamic was quite the same. Great rabbis came to Israel. They led beautiful communities in Europe or in Yemen or in Ethiopia. The case is the Ethiopian rabbi. They were like the jewel of the community. Avrum, when they came to Israel, they lost everything.
Yeah.
Their dignity, their status. I don't have to tell you what happened to the Ethiopian Jews who came to Israel. Sometimes their very Jewish identity was in doubt. Can you imagine something like this? Like they dreamed for 2,000 years to come back to Israel, or maybe even more, by the way, because many of them are from came there after the destruction of the first temple. Many of them believe that the first thing that when they are going to arrive to Jerusalem, they are going to go to Beit HaMikdash. They did not know that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed 2,000 years ago. But anyway, these people became broken. Everything was taken. And the most important thing, the dignity of themselves. People who saw their parents for Iraq. I remember like many memoirs that I read. People came from Iraq in 49. the father was like a bank manager, was a very important person in the government of Iraq that was under the mandate. They came to Israel, you threw them into a tent or like a tin, like a shade, they lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Meraglim had the same, they were smart, they knew when we arrived to Eretz Israel, the most important people are going to be the soldiers who are going to conquer the land, the young generation who does not carry all the memory that we have. We are going to be out. We are going to be retirees. And they were afraid of this one. And therefore, I think their biases said maybe it's better to stay in the desert and not to arrive to Eretz Israel. And again, this is not my radical idea. The Zohar talks about this personal aspect of fear of losing your identity as a leader.
Who's the Zohar, Rabbi?
The Zohar is a Kabbalistic work that related to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, namely 1900 years ago. It surfaced in Spain in the, I believe, in the 13th century. We are not sure 100% who wrote it, what is the exactly, if indeed it was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai or not, but nevertheless, in most of the community, that's considered to be a major work parallel to the Talmud that we spoke a few times about the Kabbalistic ideas of the Torah. And sometimes it reveals all kinds of layers that the Torah itself does not tell us. For example, what were the motives of the Meraglim? Here you have a prime example of like revealing secretive motives that does not appear in the pshat in the Torah itself, but are behind the story.
Rabbi, I just want to buttress the point that you made a few minutes ago about losing one's status. There was a fellow here in Toronto who was a very important individual in one of the synagogues, one of the shuls, and he was involved in so many different aspects of volunteerism and activism. He was a big name. And we have that in the diaspora where people stand very tall and they take on a big task and people know of them. They're known very well for what they do. In Toronto, we have Rabbi Koropkin, who's a fine human being, the leader of one of the biggest Orthodox synagogues in the world, and he is extremely active in a very courageous manner. This fellow whom I speak of, before he made Aliyah, after he made Aliyah, I said to him, tell me something. What is the most difficult thing for you in Israel? He goes, I'm just not quite as important as I used to be. There are a lot of me.
This is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And when you go to the Lord of the Flies, you see two people are fighting over leadership. And we are talking here about boys the age of 12 and 14. One is Ralph, which is a symbol for rational thinking. And the other one is Jake, who is a very intuitive, a very impulsive kind of leader. And the dynamics started from the fact that Jake, who was not chosen as the leader on the island, he was before the head of a choir. And here in the new setting in the island, he finds himself not the leader anymore.
Yes.
For people who used to lead, this is the worst experience. From a person that everyone look upon to from people who feel fulfilled, by the way. Being in a leadership position, you feel very fulfilled, you became no one. And this is a very, very difficult situation that different people take in a different way.
So you have this group of children who arrive on this island. They're destitute. And this evolution occurs, this happening, whereby they split. And in really simple terms, as you mentioned before, Ralph was the head of what we'll call the good group. He was the Joshua and the Caleb of the Meraglim, of the
Exactly.
spies, right?
Exactly.
And then,
That's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
right.
They
And
believed in their power to survive as long as they keep the laws that they set. This is very important because here you also have a new understanding why the Torah, not only by being like a set of rules given by God, kept the Jewish people for 40 years in the desert. Because once you have a frame of law, society will somehow survive. The moment you break it, the society will not survive.
so the groups break off. Rabbi, we know based on what you just said, there's one school of thought that the spies who went into Canaan, eventually to be Israel, they did so. They gave a negative report for their own well-being, for their own future. What happened with these kids when they landed in this island? Why did one break off and they went what we'll call the civil direction, the good direction, and the other broke off and they became savage?
I think that's the major question that Golding want to present to us. And by the way, I have to tell you a very interesting background story about Golding. Golding was a teacher in a high school. So I very sympathize with his situation. And he said in his memories that were published after he passed away, that he used in the high school to create in the class two groups that compete with each other. He found that competition helps to enhance curiosity and learning more seriously. And then when he wrote the book, The Lord of the Flies, he already had this model of two groups compete with each other. This is number one. Number two, another anecdote, which I find very interesting. You know, when he gave, this was his first book, he gave it to the publisher. Every important publishing company, they have readers. The 5 first readers say, this is not a good book. The 5th one wrote, rubbish and dull. But there was another person who read the book and he said, there is something very special about this book.
Yes.
And he championed it, and it became, you know, a material for Nobel Prize, which is very, very interesting. Can you imagine that this person would not show up and the Lord of the Flies would be today, I don't know, like will not published. And it's a very important book. It's actually appeared in the New York Times in the most important 100 books, the 100 most important books that you have to read. So can you imagine this one?
I'm fascinated by the background information that you gave us, and I'd like you to take us further into the story. Answering my question is, what is it about humankind that allows for that split, for that break between the good boys and the very, very bad and savage boys?
Yep. This is exactly the question that Golding tried to deal with. Who are we as humans? And he put it in the, I believe, in the words of Simon, who said, what are we? Humans? Animals? Savages? Because this is a major question that I would say overarching the entire book. Is a human being is a good creature or a bad one?
Yes.
What will happen if you put a group of people ungoverned with no leadership? Are they going to somehow bring all the best of the human being or all the worst of human being? And to be honest with you, it might be the split between Judaism and Christianity, if you think about it. If a person was born a sinner and therefore he had no redemption or a person can redeem himself because we were created in a way that we can be righteous. We are good people in nature. And listen, it's not only a Jewish question, a theological question, like economy. Hobbes and others were fighting exactly the same question. What is the nature of the human being? Mm-hmm. And I would say that apparently we can be both, and we saw it throughout the history. We saw Nazism, which you might say that just give people the authority to do what they want. They became the worst killers and murderers. And remember, when he wrote this book, it was in the years of the Second World War. I don't think that he knew a lot about the Holocaust at the time, but the Holocaust just demonstrates that human beings can be savages. At the same time, you look at the Jewish people, their fight, their ideals, their sacrifice to survive, and you get a completely different story. So as a Jew, as a rabbi, for sure, I want to see the human being as created B'Tselem Elokim. We can be perfect. By the way,
in the image of God.
In the image of God, exactly. And the place to do it, which was chosen for it, is Eretz Israel. And that's why the story of the Meraglim comes again and shows you, I wanted to bring you to the land that is going to be a new paradise. You will be able to build a fantastic society because you will have everything for you, like the island was. The island had water and had a beautiful sea and sun, and they never lacked any food. But it comes with a price. You have to keep the laws of the group on the island, and you have to keep the commandments of the Torah in Eretz Israel. And when the spies demoralized the Jewish people to come, that means they broke the spirit who wanted or was able to create a perfect society. And here is another parallel between the story of Shlach Lecha and the story of the island.
Just building on your point there, within the book, we find at some point there's two characters who were actually murdered. One you referred to as Simon. The other was Piggy. And they were killed in such an awful way where one of the members of Jack's group, if not Jack himself, rolled a huge rock off a hill, and it crashed down and killed them. And it killed, I think it was called a cooch, which was a representation of peace, a horn that they would use. And the idea was, the symbolism was that it was destroying goodness. I often think, Rabbi, and I'm just wondering what you have to say about this, is that in Rwanda in 1994, up to 1 million people were macheted, were killed, right? They were killed by thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Hutus, of Rwandan citizens. The war was over. There were no resources to set up courts, or mostly not, to take those thousands and thousands of people who had destroyed villages, families, and to ultimately, give them their due judgment. It just wasn't. There wasn't after the Second World War either. There was Nuremberg, but it was a handful of people. So what happens is, when the children on the island were rescued by this Navy fellow you spoke of, they went back to regular life. When the Rwandan war was over and the smoke started to settle, those who were murderers settled into society, right? And I often wonder myself, is our society then mixed to such an extent with evil? And how does that affect who we are and what we do?
Again, apparently the answer is yes. We human beings can reach the lowest of the lowest things that sometimes we cannot actually imagine. At the same time, human beings want to survive and to live. And, even in Rwanda today, the people who killed families live today together like they are neighbors, which is quite amazing to me. I cannot see how it happened. And we don't know what will happen there in 20 or 30 years, because it seems like it perpetuates itself. Like once people find a reason to fight, they will fight until the dream of the Nevi'im, of our prophets, will materialize. Vegar ze'ev im keveth, that the wolf is going to reside together with the lamb. But until then, I'm afraid that we are going to experience and re-experience these two groups of people, the group of Ralph, so to speak, and the group of Jake. And again, what I find very interesting in what you mentioned, you mentioned like the stone that killed Simon. Now, you tell me if you think that Golding did not read the story in Bamidbar, what the Jewish people tried to do to Caleb and Joshua, to stone them.
Those were the good spies, the two good spies.
Right, Caleb and Joshua. You talk about the conch. The conch represent in this book of Golding order, because they had a rule that only the one who hold it can speak. And when they once approached the camp of the savages of Jake, what is he doing? He takes the conch and break it to thousands of pieces. Would you tell me, like, what do you think about this scene? Like taking something and breaking it, something that represents the law?
It's the what we're speaking of is the original 10 Commandments.
Exactly.
Yes.
Isn't it interesting? And you tell me that he didn't know about it. I find it very, very hard to believe. Like, you take the epitome of order, the Aseret Adibot, and break them to thousands of pieces. That's exactly what happened in this story with the conch. So again, the parallels come more about the symbolism of them. I don't say that it's exactly the same, but I think the idea is the same idea. You break the rule, you break the society.
Rabbi, I'm very curious about you as an Israeli. You fought in the IDF. You lost friends. May they rest in peace. Your parents still live in Eretz Yisrael. They should be well for many years. I'm wondering what you see in modern day Israel in the context of Shelach, the Parsha that we speak of, the two good guys, the 10 not so good guys. And as a teacher, as a vice principal at Chat, the community high school, somebody who has been teaching as a Rosh Yeshiva, who understands children very well, do you actually see amongst children that split that we talked about, the goodness, the righteousness versus the savagery? Tell us about both of those.
First of all, I'm so happy that you raised the question about Israel, because our Parsha, to me, is another lens to see what is happening in Israel. I have to tell you, I do believe that, B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God, we are going to come stronger from everything that is happening. But what scares me the most is the split of the Jewish people. The fact that we have the spies and Caleb and Joshua. Now, I'm not talking who is right, who is wrong. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not judgmental. I think that every camp in Israel have very important points. But when society start to fight one against the other, and there is no divine intervention, the results can turn to be very, very ugly. Just read The Lord of the Flies, because I see a lot of what happening in The Lord of the Flies happening today in Israel, a collapse of society into itself. And if there will be no leader that will manage somehow to bring together all parts of society, and I don't see anyone on the arena, the political arena right now, I'm very concerned. I'm very, very concerned, more than the Hezbollah, more than the Hamas, and more than anything else. I'm very concerned about it. This is number one. In schools, well, that happened quite constantly, because the machloikes, the disagreement between Ralph and
Jake.
is very, very simple. If a leader is someone who serves the people who follows him, or a leader is someone that want to use the people for himself.
Mhm.
And these are the two leadership, and they repeat themselves again and again. There are great leaders who see themselves as servants of the people. This was Ralph, by the way. He was not perfect, but his eye were on the ball. He wanted to make sure that they are going to survive and going to be rescued. That's why he insisted on the smoke on the top of the mountain. By the way, another symbol to Har Sinai, right? Like a mountain with smoke on top. Har Sinai Hashem Kulo. And on the other hand, you have Jake, who wanted and manipulated the situation, so he is recognized as the leader. And now I want to say one more thing that will tie us to Israel. What did the Meraglim, what the spies did? What was their strategy? They spread fear and panic. They came and told the people, yes, it's a beautiful land. However, and the Ramban say this word, however, changed the course of Jewish history. This, however, which means we cannot conquer the land. You had the promise from God. You just received the Torah. You are organized as a wonderful camp, and you tell the people you cannot do it. This is a failure of leadership. And a major part of Lord of the Flies is about an imaginary beast that they have to fight.
Yes, yes.
But Simon, again, a very insightful boy, he said, the beast does not exist. We are the beast. We create our beasts. So now I say the following, and that's where I disagree with many of the generals and the commentators in the newsrooms. You say the situation is hard. That's fine. It is. You say we cannot destroy Hamas, you destroy the spirit of the nation. And I think something that really bothered me is how Rashei Shivtei Israel, people who were generals and chief generals and former leaders and prime minister, they say, we cannot win against these murderers of Hamas. The moment you say that, you break the spirit of the people. And that, I think, something that we should learn. We should learn from the story of the Meraglim. You don't know what will happen. You don't know. But don't predict it yourself. Don't say, we can do it. We are going to be killed here in the desert. You know nothing. God has his plans. We came back to the land of Israel with resilience, with a decision to rebuild and to continue the history of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Don't tell people we cannot win against our enemies, because this by itself will create a chaos, demoralization, and eventually defeat. And it shouldn't happen. We have strong soldiers. It's unbelievable to hear the stories of Avrum. I hear every day stories. I'm so inspired. We have lions, young soldiers. Sometimes the leaders fail to lead them. When they tell them you cannot take over the Hamas, you cannot kill Sinwar, it's an idea, we cannot go over it. Mistake, mistake, mistake. We have to strengthen the spirit of this nation. Because otherwise, as I said, it's between being strong in spirit and chas v'shalom defeat. Chas v'shalom.
Rabbi, in conclusion, excuse me, we're all one of the Meraglim. We're all one of the spies. We're all one of the children in the Lord of the Flies. What can we do as human beings or as parents or as teachers to ensure that that side of us, which is the civil side, the good side, the decent side, comes to the fore. And the side within, because I know myself that I have anger and I have toxicity in me and I have bad memories that sometimes lead to bad actions. What can we do? What can I do in order to lean that one way where the goodness flows in?
I think we have to say in a very honest way, or even to demand. You don't have to say to someone, you are good, you are good. You know, we are a generation of giving trophies. I'm not talking about this one, but we do have to say to everyone, you can do it. You have unbelievable resources to do what you want. You can reach far, far away. And it's always a good idea to see what happened with your neighbors, with your friends, to help others. You understand yourself and your life better. You give them meaning. As we spoke last week, I think we have to increase the spirituality in our life. Not so much about money and success and food. And honestly, I do believe the Jewish education is all about that, combating the savage within us, the bad person within us, because we can go very, very down, and to give hope, inspiration, and at least many people who are doing Jewish education, they're doing just this. They strengthen this part within us that is good, is striving to help, is really B'Tselem Elokim, the image of God.
Rabbi Gemara, I want to thank you very much for a wonderful share, for a wonderful class, for a wonderful podcast. I think what we're doing here is quite fascinating. I really do. And I think it's extraordinarily refreshing. A lot of people will be compelled by it or through it, and to perhaps learn more Torah. And as you say, to strengthen themselves as human beings, as Jews, right?
As I said, as a rabbi, I want people to learn the Parsha, but I am telling you, I take full responsibility for the following words. You will understand better the Parsha and the ideas of the Torah when you have a great insight into life. And some of the books that we are going to discuss, Avrum, are bringing this insight into life. But again, unlike the Lord of the Fly that end with a very bad taste and very bitter taste, the Torah said, no, there is hope. And read the end of Parashat Shlach Lecha. The Torah is talking about korbanot that were not brought in the desert. The Torah is talking about what will happen when you get to the land of Israel. So the Torah give hope.
Yes.
And that's what we have to give our Jewish community. Hope, and more hope.
Excellent. And a few portions back, God basically say, listen, if you do the right thing, your fields will be watered. If you don't do the right things, then I'll pluck out your kidneys, which I happen to think is a metaphor for something else.
Right,
that means if you follow the goodness, you'll have a good life. But God also says a very interesting thing, and I can't remember which parsha it is. He says, look, you break the covenant with me, I'm not going to break the covenant with you, right? That means that spirituality will always be amongst us, will be within our reach, our grasp. And even if we step outside of it, the God's covenant still remains with us. And I thought that was fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, the series is called Classic Tales, Biblical Truths, Weekly Torah Insights Through Literature. We will be back with you once again next week, when we will hear from Rabbi Shlomo Gemara about the Parsha, the portion of the week, and we will compare it. We will juxtapose it to some classic literature, and I think we're going to have some great times with this. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives, and Shabbat Shalom.